This is the Roy's Boys Podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys Podcast, powered by Carolina Electrical Services. For all your electrical needs, call Jacob Marlowe at 704-320-7357. He'll make sure to take care of those for you in the meantime. Josh and Anthony here with you as always, and today we got a pretty fun show. On the opening tip, I'm going to let you listening to an interview with Jones Angel that I did yesterday, and after that we're going to dive right into Luke Maye's season that was 2018-19 as we start recapping individual players' season. And then after that we got a lot of recruiting stuff to get to. But first, we're going to jump to the opening tip. So let's go ahead, Anthony, and dive right into Luke Maye's season. It was kind of a year where he averaged a double-double, but it was kind of seen as a down year to fans. He wasn't as effective as he was the year before from the field, but it was still a really big part of this team's success.
Yeah, I think that really he kind of got a bad look because they looked at how poorly he shot the ball, especially from three. And I think that was the area that a lot of people were most critical of him. But, you know, I don't really look at it as a poor season for Luke Maye. I really thought he was very effective for most of the season. I thought he struggled a little bit on the defensive end, which we kind of all knew coming into the year he would struggle a little bit, especially playing against some of the more versatile fours or some of the bigger fives. But, you know, for the most part, this guy is about as important to the success of this team as just about any player, I would probably say, in Carolina history on this specific team, because whenever he had a really off night, this team was nowhere near where they needed to be. And that was why I think he received so much criticism, because this team kind of went as he went. But, you know, I think you saw him in certain games throughout the year where he, you know, knew he had to step up and really played well. And that's the best thing that I like about Luke Maye. I mean, the work ethic is fantastic, but this guy just knows when there's a big game, it's my time to shine. I need to step up and really take advantage of this bigger stage, and I need to be one of the leaders out there. And I think, you know, for the most part, and again, he's not the most vocal guy. I think we all knew that coming in as well. But Luke is a guy that just leads by example, and I think for the most part in these big games this year, we saw exactly that.
Yeah, you mentioned his big game performances, and I got some written down here. 20-16 against Gonzaga, which was the team's first signature win of the year. Mm-hmm. He had a 31-point and 12 effort at home against NC State in the blowout win in Chapel Hill. At Duke, 30-15, and you can say, well, there was still no Zion. He still did 30-15 in Cameron Indoor. How many guys have done that in Carolina Blue? I don't think anyone has ever done it there. I think he was the first to ever do it there.
How many have dominated State and Duke like he did? I know he wasn't really overly dominant against Duke, but he did have, for the most part, throughout his career, very solid performances. And then, of course, against State, I mean, that was, you know, if he was going through a slump, just play NC State, and he was right back on track.
Yeah, I think it was three 30-point games against NC State the final 2 years, and he had 21 and 11 in the game at State this year. So another double-double, big-time effort for a big-time road win. And you're right, he seemed to have the kind of effect or the kind of ability when he needed to play big, he played big, especially early in the year when Kobe White just wasn't where he was at the end of the year, where he was probably the team's best player by season's end. And that's just a credit to Luke, because, you know, we talk about his work ethic. I don't think we've ever seen a player work harder than he has, maybe other than Tyler Hansbrough. The guy just worked his tail off in the gym to get better every single year. He could have relaxed after that sophomore year where he made the shot against Kentucky to send us to the Final Four, but he just came back and worked even harder. And then even after his junior year where he kind of broke on the scene nationally, he came back and was even a better player this year, even though the numbers may not have shown, just because he struggled shooting the ball, but that's because you're getting geared up from these elite defenses to stop you. But really just another solid season. You know, of course, didn't end with a national championship or a Final Four, but he was a big part of a team that went 16-2, which is school record in the ACC for Carolina.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that when you look back on this season for Luke Maye and you want to talk about improvement, the area that he improved the most to me was as a rebounder. I felt like there were some questions coming in about whether or not he would have the size to be able to compete against some of these bigger teams in the ACC that we were going to see. And, you know, even Duke Duke this year being bigger, Florida State as usual. And I mean, for the most part, I can't really remember a game where he didn't rebound well. Outside of that Louisville game early in the year where no one rebounded well. He wasn't the only one. But just about every other game, I mean, Luke Maye was the most consistent rebounder on this team. And part of that, I think, is that he knew he had to step up because Garrison Brooks was not going. That's just not Garrison Brooks' game. He's a guy that'll scrap in there, get some rebounds. He might hit that 6 or 7 number, more consistently than he's going to hit that double-digit 10 or 11 number. Whereas you need one of those guys on your team, especially if you're going to win the way that Carolina likes to play, which is up and down and rebounding you on the glass. I thought that Luke Maye was the guy that realized someone was needed to do that and stepped up and did exactly that this year. I thought that was his biggest area of improvement. I mean, is that your thinking as well?
Yeah, it also didn't hurt that you also lost Theo Pinson from last year's team, who was from a guy who plays on the wing, the most willing rebounder we've probably ever had under Roy Williams at Carolina. And rebounding is all about will and effort, and I think he was just more committed, more devoted, and because he was smaller, you got to fight a little bit more inside, and it's all about positioning. And you can see he's a much better positional rebounder to rebound with the bigger guys that he was going to go up against. So I'd probably agree that he did improve. Even though last year he averaged, I think it was almost 9 boards a game. It was just a different kind of rebounding that we saw this year. The number went up, but it was also just better effort, better positioning, whereas last year it was just because he was our 5-man. So you're going to naturally grab rebounds. And I think it's something, and of course we'll talk about this when we get to Garrison's player evaluation later on the line, but he's a guy that this summer he's got to become a more natural rebounder.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
Kind of like how Luke Maye developed into a guy who can naturally rebound the ball at a high rate, and that's the hallmark of this program. It is point guard play rebounding the basketball, and Luke Maye was just another example of a guy who developed into a pure rebounder. And so that was a pretty good analysis. I didn't even write that down, so good analysis from you. But just a guy that he's a guy that deserved to win. What the accolades he got and what this team's achieved and what he helped this team achieve. I don't think no one's deserved it more because the work ethic is just something that we can look at what we want to do in our field. I mean, if we don't put in our work, we're not going to make it. And look at what this guy did, a preferred walk-on who is now a Carolina legend.
Yeah, I mean, we look. I mean, we always joke around and put freshman Luke Maye and senior Luke Maye, but the difference is huge. I mean, when he came in as a freshman, you could just tell from the picture that they had of him. He was not a guy that was in shape to play at Carolina. It didn't look like he was. But Roy saw something, and I remember really the first time that we saw him was during his sophomore season. And I remember people just saying, why is this guy in the game? Well, let's be real honest. Most of us probably thought the minute that he entered that game that he was, why is Roy putting in a Blue Squad member? Like, what is this guy doing in the game? And then all of a sudden, of course, he steals our hearts in the 17 run. But I thought as he progressed along, and especially as he got into this season, he realized that he needed to be more of a leader, and he sort of stepped it up. But again, he's such a quiet guy that's why I feel like it's easy for people to criticize him, especially when it comes to his leadership, which I think, I don't have a problem with his leadership style. I thought that, that's just that's the way he is. That's the type of guy he is a quiet guy. I mean, I don't mean to reach, outside of Carolina basketball, but I'm a Giant fan in football, and Eli Manning is the same way. It's a lead-by-example type of guy. You need someone like that on your team, and I thought Luke Maye filled that role perfectly. And you're right. I mean, the accolades that he received are amazing. I mean, how many did he get? What, 3 or 4? Somewhere up in that area.
Well, this is what he won just this year alone. He won the Skip Prosser Award, which is the ACC top scholar athlete, so he got the job done in the classroom, which is always important. And then just from the team banquet, the awards he won for this team, the John Lotz Award, he was the captain of the team. Tyler Zeller Scholar Athlete Award, can't talk today. Billy Cunningham, team leading rebounder. Brendan Hayward, he led the team in block shot, which is kind of surprising. You wouldn't think that because he didn't block a whole lot of shots. And
to be fair, no one did.
Exactly. But you're right. There's nothing wrong with having a guy that leads by example. if you're doing the right things like he did on the floor in practice and in the games. And just a phenomenal year. It did get frustrating having to deal with the fan base constantly complaining when he wasn't giving us 20 and 10 every night because suddenly 12 and 8 wasn't good enough. But you're still winning games. It's just like, okay, what do you want? Do you want him to score 30 and us lose? Or do you want him score 12 and, you see Kobe White develop and Cam Johnson develop to the kind of guys because he didn't need to be. Last year we needed him to give us big games a lot, it felt like, to win. And that was with Joel Berry and Theo Pinson on the roster, who both won a national championship. This year we didn't need him to give us 20, 25, and 10 every night in the ACC because all these other guys developed and growed. And it was really part of him being an unselfish player. I mean, there were some times he could have maybe demanded the ball more, but I felt like, at Duke, they knew, okay, he's feeling it. We're going to give him the ball. But we also learned that, and he also learned when Kobe's in the zone, it's okay to let Kobe go do his thing because he's that's what he does. And so just a total team player is what Luke Maye was this year.
Oh yeah, same thing with Cam Johnson, by the way, with the in the zone. I mean, when Cam's going, you give him the ball. Right. Yeah, and I think you're right. It was kind of weird, but I think part of that is because when you look on the offensive end, we'll always remember Theo as a great player, but Theo was not really a guy that was super effective on the offensive end. Like, he wasn't a guy that would string 4 or 5 possessions in a row together where he was scoring at will. That just didn't happen. He was a guy that was really good on fast break opportunities offensively and had some of those moments where he would drive inside. And then with Joel, he had his moments, of course, where he would take over. I thought he was somewhat similar to Kobe, but, move the ball a little bit slower up the court, which also benefited Luke because Luke was a guy that could run the floor. But when you got a guy like Kobe White, not many bigs can run the floor that fast. That was a problem this year. Kobe was down the floor so quickly, Luke didn't even have time to get down there. Last year, Luke was the guy that was most of the time the head man on those fast break opportunities. So that's another area where he was able to succeed that this year wasn't there. But I'm okay with it. Like you said, I think he really did, what he had to do. He filled the role that he had to fill. He did it very successfully. He elevated his game where he needed to elevate his game. And now this is a guy that, I know that some of the loyalists and traditionalists will say, well, I can't believe they're actually having the petitions to put his jersey up in the rafters. Do I think it should ultimately go up there? Probably not, because he doesn't. There are the guidelines that have been laid out for a long, long time of who goes up there. So, yeah, tradition says you stick with that. But the fact that there are people that are that passionate about it shows you just how big of an impact this young man had at Carolina. I mean, that, especially, and it carried over into this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to say he deserves to go up there when the guidelines that Dean Smith laid out, he didn't quite meet. Some of it's kind of weird that he didn't get some of these awards from the ACC. It's just the way it fell with with as much talent as in the conference. So you got Duke that's loaded, right. Virginia had great players and all this and whatnot. So it'd be cool to see his name up there, but then you got to make an exception for Kennedy Meeks, or it's just going to create a domino effect of this guy and that guy and this guy. But still, even if his jersey's not in the rafters for what he did individually, it'll still be up there because he won a national championship, and they have a place in the rafters for that. So, and we'll never forget him. We don't have to look in the rafters to remember who Luke Maye is and was in Carolina basketball. Is there anything else we want to talk about Luke Maye before we get to the final segment of the podcast?
I think we're putting this up today, so if you want to swing by Huff High School in Cornelius, what do they call that? The Barnstorming Tour, I think is the name of it.
Yeah.
Where they go out, the ACC Barnstorming Tour. So they are actually up at his old high school tonight, up in Cornelius, right outside of Charlotte. So if you guys want to go check out Luke Maye, Kenny Williams, and Cam Johnson also are joining him up there. But that's pretty cool. You get to see him play in his old high school gym and go support Luke Maye for one last time in a Carolina jersey.
Yeah, right. And his jersey is retired by his high school. So pretty fun moment for Luke Maye. We'll transition to the final segment of the podcast, which is Beat the Buzzer. And kind of like the last time we did the show, it's all recruiting. And we have a lot of good news to talk about with Carolina landing both Cole Anthony, who's the prize recruit of this recruiting class yesterday morning, and then less than 12 hours later getting the combo guard of Anthony Harris to commit, which jumped the class from 51st to 6th in a matter of 12 hours as a 45-position jump. And Carolina got two really, really good players. You got Cole Anthony, who's the best point guard in the class, the highest decorated point guard that Roy Williams has ever signed, and he had a lot of praise for him yesterday, saying that he's probably the most complete point guard he's ever recruited. The ability to pass, the ability to shoot.
That's kind of
we don't see it in the highlights, but undoubtedly he's a pretty willing defender. Of course, you don't see that in
they
the,
don't show that in highlights,
yeah,
man.
exactly.
Come on.
And then Anthony Harris is another guy that a former Virginia Tech commit who once Buzz Williams left for Texas A&M and this kind of felt like it was going to fall into place for Carolina, was on campus, was it yesterday or the day